you've been in real estate for, I don't know, what, 30 years?
Yes, approximately, yeah.
A long time, right? You
27.
bought your duplex in, what, 1990? Long time ago?
Yes.
You now own 700 units, all kinds of real estate. I'm curious to know how you got started in real estate.
My dad was working class guy who worked super hard around the clock, 10 to 12 hour days, 6 to 7 days a week. And he invested in real estate, and I saw that as providing capital, providing income without working. Now I know you might have to work to get the capital. I know you might have to work to analyze the deal. I'm not saying it's a work-free endeavor, but one of the things that I find for sure, and people ask me all the time, how much time do you spend on your 700 units? And the answer is remarkably low, almost no time. I spend time on the front side acquisition. I'll spend some time on the repositioning, but once it's set, it's on autopilot, and my team takes care of it from there.
So how did you get, you bought your first duplex? Is that the first piece of real estate you bought? And why was it a duplex, not like 98% of other people, they just buy single family houses? You went to a duplex and...
It was about the opportunity more than the type of property. So it was a piece of property that was in a great neighborhood, and it was definitely a dump in a great neighborhood. It was actually a gorgeous home that had been chopped into a really awful duplex. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I find, it's certainly in the criteria that I use, is the ugly duckling, for sure. And in that ugly duckling, there's always great upside.
And what were you doing at the time? And then, what were you doing? Did you have a job? What were you doing at the time?
I was in school and working in our family business. It was right before I went away. So I did undergrad in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. I worked in our family business the whole time, and basically went to school and blamed my lack of success for the work that I did with the family business, and then went to school and blamed the lack of success that I had in the family business on school.
Now, so you got started with real estate really early then?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's because you saw the mailbox money coming in.
Yeah, I saw that as an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity to build wealth. And you know, I've always done it with someone else. And one of the things that did for me was it gave me courage. I'm not sure I've actually made that point. I've been interviewed so many times, I'm not sure I've made that point before. There's definitely this sort of stepping off part where you go from the sidelines to not being on the sidelines. And I've always done it with a partner. Now I've had one partner for a very, very long time as my best childhood friend. We remain partners on most, but not all, the stuff that we do. And he's a very smart guy. He moves a little slower than me. I think we're equally smart. He moves a little slower, and so we both add something to the table. I'm not going to kill the deal with analysis, for sure. I'm going to do the opposite. And he will pick up some things that I missed just for my desire for speed.
It's an interesting comment about partnering gives you courage. Actually, if you look at my own partnerships and around me, these partnerships, if they're done right, not all of them work out, but if they're done right, it really does propel the individual very rapidly into a whole new sphere. And I think a lot of it does build confidence and courage if you have someone else involved. That's interesting.
Absolutely correct. And very counter to what we've just said, if somebody blanket across the board to your listeners, and you got a fabulous podcast and really helping a lot of people get started, and as a flat out blanket piece of advice, if you said, Paul, tell my listeners, partner or no partner, I would say no partner. And that is because I've seen more folly in partnerships than anything else. Now for me, I chose my partner based on brain power and honesty, and that was brain power, integrity, and that was it. And so for whatever other pluses, minuses, it's Eddie Krifcher, my business partner and lifelong best friend. So he's got lots of pluses and minuses other than that, but it's an absolute constant is integrity and brain power.
And that's the hard thing to know in partnerships. Sometimes you just don't know about the person. And I think integrity is at the root of most failed partnerships.
Sure. Integrity and what leads to integrity, I believe, is lack of clarity. So again, a topic that I haven't discussed, but if anyone is going to do a partnership, I would get the deal points, the exit strategy, what happens when things go great, what happens on a total fail in writing. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be done by a lawyer. Put it on a piece of paper, date it and sign it, and you've got a real understanding.
Yeah.
Would absolutely not do a partnership without that.
Yeah, that's good advice. Kind of like a prenup. Yeah.
Yes.
makes a lot of
Yes.
sense. Now, so at what point did you view real estate, or maybe you did at the time, as a way out or a way to actually support yourself? A lot of times we start off kind of on the side, we want to supplement our income, and then we kind of realize over time that, oh my gosh, I can actually replace my income with this stuff. At what point did you have that realization, or where you said, I'm going to go after that as my primary source of income?
It was certainly later in the game. And if somebody asked me what I do for a living, real estate investor would definitely be one of the things that I would say. And there was some point in time where it was an odd thing for me to say, but after you get to a certain point in that, then it becomes more natural. And I will tell you that a lot of people believe that in order to succeed at something new, you burn the boats behind you, and that's probably a fabulous strategy. It's not one that I have used. So what I did, and very similar, with your background, is you did so many things, and then along the way you finally figured out, well, let me invest some money in some other things, some cash flow businesses, as you said, and then also in real estate. And you're not quitting your day job until you have some security with that.
Right. Burning boats is a good strategy, but it does take some guts to do that.
And I personally don't believe it's necessary.
I don't think so either.
Especially with a real estate investment.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you've done a lot of real estate investments over the years. What kind of investment do you like best, and why?
So I really greatly prefer a buy and hold strategy. And when you do a buy and hold strategy, the one thing that you focus on the most is really getting into the right deal. And a lot of the money is made in the acquisition and the early stages of the deal. One of the things, and I do some of this by gut, there's really two reasons. The flip side of it is, why not do real estate flipping? And there's two reasons for that. Number one, I'm not good at it. And what I mean by that is there's so many details to manage. I'm not a great detail person. And there's so many things you can mess up. And I've seen a lot of people get hurt in the flippers. People do it and they keep growing and growing and growing, and eventually the market changes, the music stops, and they're stuck with all this debt, and all the equity they built gets crushed along with the houses that they have online. It was just too risky of a strategy for me. The other thing is, this is a real psychological piece, but I believe in it firmly, is that I would work very hard, what I view as very hard, to do this acquisition piece. And then when I acquired the property, no matter how great it was, I'd put some sweat into it, I'd improve it a bit, and I'd have this upside value. And if I immediately sold it and took out the upside value, I was really at ground zero again.
Hey,
So now what?
Now what?
Okay, now what do I do? I'm not ever sure I can get as great a deal as I did before on my next one. Now, time has shown me that I can always find great deals in whatever market. But what I do with that great acquisition is I reposition, I put it on my balance sheet. And then I get to say, like, wow, isn't that cool, for a very long time, forever, instead of, oh, geez, I bought this house one time and a great buy, and now it's, gone.
Right. Now, in your book, Wealth Can't Wait, you use a very simple formula. You said live below your means and then invest the excess of real estate. But at one point, you actually got a taste for raising money. Mm-hmm. How did that come about?
So it's a good strategy to build wealth is to spend less than you earn. A terrible strategy would be the opposite. When you spend more than you earn, you're going to spend yourself into the hole. I don't find it to be terribly motivating or a lot of fun to save your way to becoming a millionaire. I know that it can be done. You know, there's a book, Millionaire Next Door. It's all about saving your way to $1 million. You know, I mean, I would fall asleep in the first 5 pages of that book and go like, okay, this isn't for me. I want to earn my way into the wealth that I aspire to have.
Yeah. In your book, you talk about wealth in terms of, I think you say it's a code for freedom, I think is what
Yes.
you, and you're saying freedom is the ultimate gift in life. So you're suggesting wealth is not really about money, it's about something else. Can you talk about more about what you think wealth is about, and maybe it's a means to an end? What is that?
So for me, it's freedom. And one of the things that I would encourage all of your listeners to do is they want to build all this wealth, they want to earn all this money. And I would encourage them to look at it and say, why? Why do I want to do that? For me, it's very simple, and I think having, you know, what I've come to call as a big why is very important. My big why is freedom, the power to choose and create. And I know that wealth gives me that freedom. And very simply, what that means is the power to choose is to choose what I want to do, when I want to do it, and with whom I want to do it. And if we could all have that, I mean, how magnificent is that? You know, that's amazing. So the have-tos in the world, oh, I have to go to work, I have to report to the boss that I don't like, I have to do this, really creating choice. So that's the first part of it. And then I just love creation. That's the creation. You take an idea and have the power to take that idea into reality, and that really excites me.
Yeah, it's a good point. When I've tried to have a conversation with someone about living a life of purpose and significance, you know, figuring out your passions, they look at me like I'm crazy, right? So what are you talking about? I work 50 plus hours a week. I come home, put the kids to bed, and put myself to bed just so I can get up, do it again next day. Then I need the weekend to recover just so I can do it again on Monday. What are you talking about?
Yes.
Life of significance.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating to me because I've been asking myself what can I do to live a life of significance, and it's difficult to have a conversation with someone whose mindset does not allow them that, because they're so consumed with providing for the family, which is their calling, right? And we all accept that responsibility. But wouldn't it be neat if more of us could live more of a life of significance? I mean, I think the world would be a better place.
For sure. And for, you know, it was a pivotal conversation. It's very funny. I talk about it in the book a little bit. You know, my nephew is a devout. I have one nephew who's a devout Christian, which is kind of interesting given that we're Jewish. So that's cool. And at one point in time, very early in our conversations, he said to me, "Well, you know, money isn't everything." And it's interesting when people sort of come at it with that view. He and I are far more in alignment than you could ever imagine. And I truly believe with his life's purpose that the world would be a better place if he had a lot of wealth behind him. So it really does allow you to achieve your higher goals.
I do think you're spot on about wealth equaling freedom, because when I listen to my audience, they don't say I want to be a millionaire. They're saying is they want to control their time. They want their time back. They want choices. And so a meaningful first financial milestone to that end is basically you covering your living expenses, right? And so when people sit down and they say financial freedom, we can use multifamily to get there, then the first goal is, well, what are your living expenses? What can you do to reduce those? And once you've achieved that, now you have options. So it's interesting that people use that word freedom, which is often overused, but that's exactly what they're looking for. They're not looking for $1 million. They're looking for freedom, and it means something different to everybody else.
And you know, you said something very interesting, and that was, you know, they want to get their time back. People will ask me these questions, and it's so interesting because when even in the statement, and it's related to what you were talking about, even in the statement, money isn't everything. Well, what is everything? So everything might be, and certainly would include love, would include health, and would include time spent with your family, time to give back, time to do whatever it is that you want to do. And here's an interesting perspective. Wealth and money are absolutely terrible terrible at buying time already spent. They're incredible at buying future time.
Right.
So you can, I gave a different nephew money to fly across the country instead of literally take a bus. Think about the, $700 buys you a lot of time in that instance. Steve Jobs, obviously very, very wealthy man, was terminally ill. And when he was terminally ill, he had, all the money in the world essentially to throw at that illness, and it did not stop the illness. However, wealth can provide health. So there are, millions of people in other countries that don't have clean water to drink. A very small amount of money buys a lot of health in the future, and even down to love, where you have most, you can read on it, most married couples fight about money and how to raise their kids. So you can take money off the table and work on the second one.
Money is really important, right? You have to address it. You can't just stick your head in the sand. You have to provide for your family, right? Whatever that means. So it is actually important, and we have to address it. The problem is we can't reconcile earning the money and the time. We can't reconcile the two.
Yes.
And our challenge is, how can we have both? How can we have both time and money? And that's people's primary frustration with earning a living, is that. And that's what I think, and I think you agree that real estate, specifically multifamily, is a great tool to achieve that. But in your book, you do point out some traps that keep people from achieving that goal. Can you talk about some of the I think 7 wealth traps, and what keeps people stuck?
Sure. So one of them is just being in a comfortable job.
That's a big one.
Yeah. So that, and it might not even be the job is so comfortable. It's just that the idea of making a switch is so terrifying, and that's why I think you don't have to burn the boats. Avoiding risk is a massive one. So right now, I get this question a lot. I don't have a crystal ball. I do not know when the market is going to turn. I thought it was going to turn a little while ago. I also know it's safe to say that we are closer to the top than we are the bottom. What does that mean to me? Have I stopped investing? And the answer is no, I haven't stopped investing. But I am more careful. So I have that awareness that we don't have that super long runway where the market will necessarily take care of our mistakes. So avoiding risk is a big one, and you just stay on the sidelines and stay on the sidelines, and nothing will ever happen.
Safe place to be.
You're out here in LA, and I love that. Doing this face to face is awesome. I lived in Washington D.C. for a number of years. I've lived many different places. That's probably true everywhere, but I get the sense like LA. It's the land of the big idea. And so how many friends do we have with a really big idea? And the big idea, believe it or not, is something that can stop people. It's insidious, can stop people from making that incremental change. Because let's face it, if I sit down and the business plan is this massive business plan, and then we're going to create it, and then we're going to spend all this time, and then we're going to go out and find venture funding and blah, blah, blah. It sounds great, and we start doing all this work. If you and I say, hey, let's build this massive real estate portfolio, so what are we going to do first? Let's buy a duplex. You're like, wow, that's not that sexy. That's not that, there's a lot of work, and what if we buy the wrong duplex? And then it just starts coming to light. And one of the ways that I avoid that in many of my business dealings is when somebody comes at me with a big idea. First of all, I generally say no to anything that's not in my core competence. But if I decide to do it, I always want to say, okay, that sounds great. Let's start with one. And you'd be surprised how often it just falls to the wayside.
And it simplifies the thing, right? Don't talk about your grand dream. Let's just start with one.
Yes.
And that shifts your perspective.
Yep,
just
absolutely.
that one deal.
Yes.
People get so overwhelmed with stuff.
Yes. Yep. And just the idea of one of the things, mindset's very important. I gave a sort of a keynote speech at the UCLA MBA program for entrepreneurs, And the title of my talk was Success Without Hard Work and Sacrifice. And we'll have to save that for another podcast. But you know, one of the keys to that is just, it doesn't have to be that hard. If you're doing something you really enjoy, and we can create this, Michael, you and I know how we can create this in a way we really enjoy it. So if you're doing something you enjoy, is it really hard work? And then the other piece is people really liken massive success with sacrifice. And I will tell you, it does not have to be the case. Certain people, and we can find evidence for it. So go find somebody who's fabulously wealthy and they'll tell you a terrible sacrifice story. Go find somebody that's not terribly wealthy and you can hear a great sacrifice story. On the other hand, there are ways to achieve success in what you want without giving up something else that's vital to you.
Yeah. I think you talk also about holding on to toxic friendships and weak social circle, right? I think that you talked about that. That's a big one, because oftentimes your friends and your family are really not the best people to be around. I was picked up by a guy in a Tesla yesterday, mid-20s. He came here, he moved here 7 months ago from some farm in California because his parents thought he was crazy. They were praying for his soul, I think. He had invented some kind of supervillain, and he was creating videos with it, and he came to LA and he goes, I am finally home. People don't think I'm crazy. People actually like what I do. And it was his environment was holding him back, which is really sad, because it was his friends and family, and they said, you're crazy.
I had a sense of that early on when I was in Pittsburgh. I just, and it's not that Pittsburgh's a bad place, it's a great place, but the friends that I grew up with, the really successful ones, left Pittsburgh and found greater lives in New York or LA or different places, and it really, you hear the cliches about, your net worth is the average of your 5 closest friends. And, one of my best friends runs a nonprofit in Wisconsin, and I can tell you her net worth is not massive because she has chosen a social calling. I'll never knock her off the, inside 5 list because of that. But she has wealth in a very different way. And if you view your friendships in that way, you can take a lot from it. And it can take a lot away from you. And sometimes we carry around toxic friendships just because it fills a void for us. And I was doing that for sure. I have a friend, every time he calls, it's like, like all the negative. And then finally I realized, yes, he did say, hi, how are you? But he never waited for the answer before he started telling me the 7,000 things that were wrong in his life that perhaps I could solve. So I felt great by solving a few of them, by listening, and it just was not carrying me to a positive place and wasn't allowing me to be the great person that I could be to people who really could benefit from advice or help or working alongside them.
Right. It's sad though, we have let friends go. But I've had interactions with people who believed in me more than I believed in myself, and all of a sudden my confidence went up just because this person had confidence in me. And surrounding yourself with people like that just really raises you up.
And you've touched on something that's amazing. It's really, I am not sure where I have that written down, but I'll be sure to listen to the podcast and take notes on my own. And I will tell you, honestly, it is one of the things that carried me the farthest, and that was the 2 or 3 or 4 important individuals in my life that believed in me more than I believed in myself. Now, one of the interesting things is it would have to be somebody who I think is amazing. So I'm like, oh, that person's totally amazing. They're like, what? They think that I'm amazing?
Right.
That's, it's really, it helps a lot. And when you get the opposite, it is really
devastating,
degenerative. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so are there a couple, any more on your list?
One of the things you talked about before was just dealing with setbacks, and how to deal with setbacks, and it's also, it's part of this sort of 7 ways you're hurting your chances at building wealth. And one of them, on one hand, I believe that the best way to create success is to take responsibility. Take responsibility for absolutely everything. So that, there's a whole story about why it didn't work. It was the contractor. It was who chose the contractor? And it was the this and that, and I didn't realize. Just take responsibility for all of it, and that will propel your success. In order to do that, and to do it successfully, and in order to do it with ease, is not to victimize yourself. So I will, on one hand, take responsibility for all the plus minus. On the other hand, I forgive myself very easily. So if you are a person that feels like they cannot make a mistake, or a mistake would be devastating, it's going to be a tremendous impediment to you getting into the investing game, for sure. And so if you feel that way, that's okay. Just have that awareness. They're like, wow, I'm so afraid that, all my friends, none of my friends are doing this. So now all of a sudden, I'm going to do it, I'm going to fail, and they're going to say, oh, we knew that was going to happen, you're a knucklehead, or you have this feeling inside like I could fail, and then when you fail, you go, oh, I knew it. Just being really light with yourself. I make lots of mistakes and keep charging forward, and one of the ways to keep charging forward is I take responsibility. I'm not blaming the mistakes on someone else. As soon as you do that, you're apt to make the same mistake again. As soon as you take responsibility from it, you can turn the mistake into a lesson, and what keeps you going is really the fact that I'm easy with myself on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of people, and I see it even with some of my coaching students, 2.5 months into it, they don't have their first deal yet, and it's taking longer, it's taking more work, and they get really down on themselves. Because and that's the purpose of a coach, is to help someone get through that setback, because they're inevitable. It takes longer, there's some challenges, right? And so really being able to deal with that, and I think one of them is giving up or not staying the course through setbacks or challenges or delays, being able to deal with that.
For sure. And not to, Michael did not ask me to do this before the podcast, but I will tell you that coaching from Michael will really help. And one of the things that I've found is, you could put me in a room with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and I do it all the time. And the advice that I give, it just sounds so sage. Oh, wow, he's so smart. This is why we don't invest, because we'll look at. I listen to my co-author, and I go, wow, I'm so impressed. And the interesting thing is, someone who can give fabulous advice to somebody else, very, very difficult to find your own blind spots. So someone who is 50% as skilled as I am could still serve as a great coach to me.
And that's because you think you might know it all. I think that's
yes,
one of your lists,
right.
That's really dangerous, yeah.
And in that I know for sure I don't know it all, for sure. And I also know that even the things that I know aren't always obvious or accessible to me, and that's why a business partner, that's why a coach can really help.
Yeah. And one of the things I get a lot is, this is all great, Paul, but I don't really have any money. I can even barely afford my rent or my mortgage. How do I start investing? What do you tell that person?
So there are two ways. I'll go with and I've done them both. And I'll go with the simplest, easiest, most obvious one first. And that is, if you don't own your own home, you should buy a home. And here's how you do it. So the first home that I was already investing in real estate, and I lived in Washington, D.C., and I was renting. So here I am, multifamily owner, but I'm renting an apartment. And I continued to rent for quite some time. One of the reasons was that I did not want to buy in the suburbs. I didn't want to live in the suburbs. I didn't view the value of the suburbs going up tremendously the same way the inner city would, and I just love being in the city. So what I did was I saved up enough money for the down payment. Now the down payment on your own home, owner occupied, is a lot different than an investment property. So at that time, you could do a 5% down deal. You still can do way less money down on an owner occupied. They just know that you're less likely to default on that. You can get better rates and you can put less money down. And so what I did was I bought a house that I certainly could not afford the mortgage on, but I did have enough to put the 5% down. And when I did that, I put 3 roommates in it with me. And so I eventually got to the point where I was living in this wonderful house for free. That other people were living with me. And you know, it's just like all the impediments that you have against that. There are a lot of people living with roommates that they don't own their own place. The other thing that I did was I went to some of my favorite people and I said, you know, hey, I'd like you to consider living with me. They couldn't afford the market rent for the space that I was going to rent for them. And I'm like, okay, well, the market rent would be $1,100. What are you paying now? $700. I'm like, okay, fine, move in. Can you afford $800? So they were getting a better deal than they otherwise would. And I was living with people that I wanted to live with. I was not putting an ad out to have strangers live in my house. So there's always a way. The second way is to use other people's money, and that I did as well. It comes with added responsibility for sure, and the way to do that is to have expertise in a particular area, learn the investment tips that we talk about, find a great, instead of saying, hey, just give me some money to invest, the easiest way to get an investor is find the property first. Find the property first, now you know the deal, now you've got concrete example, and you go, okay, put the money in for the deal, and I'll run the deal, and we'll figure out a way to split it.
Yeah, exactly right, other people's money.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't need your own money.
Yep.
Exactly right. Now, you've been investing a long time. Now, you say you've never lost money, which I find hard to believe, but maybe it's actually true. But you kind of build up your rules for investing, which, and can you share those with the listeners? I think they're fantastic.
Sure. And it sounds so impressive when I say that I've been investing for 25 years and I've never lost money in investment. As soon as you hear the rules, you'll be like, well, that's why he hasn't lost money. You know,
Right.
Just follow these rules.
Right.
So one of them is pretty basic, and that's just buy where you know. And to me, and let me also say, lots of very fabulous investors who really know the investment game as much or way more than me are investing all over the place. If you can, start with where you know. So there's only 2 places that I own real estate, and that's Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from, and I stopped investing there a long time ago, but I still have units there, and Los Angeles. So now you really have sort of middle market and very expensive accelerating market. But I'm not buying in Texas, I'm not buying in these other places where people say that it's great. And one of the reasons is you just don't know. You don't know it, you can't control it, you can't fix it, you can't predict, you know, oddities when it's so far away. So buy where you know is number 1. Number 2, really important, is buy value add. And so buy value add, it sounds fancy. The far less fancy way to say it is a little cliche, and that is you buy the worst house in the best neighborhood. So I'm not actually buying the worst house in the best neighborhood, but I am buying definitely the ugly duckling in a really good neighborhood, or in a gentrifying neighborhood, a neighborhood that's really on the rise. I could share with you some ideas about how to figure out what's on the rise and what isn't. And one of my rules of thumb is when 25% or more of the properties have already changed, then it's a great time to get in to that neighborhood. And once 75% of them have already changed, then that last 25%, the upside's already built in and the values aren't there. Interestingly, when you get down to the ground level on it, once a neighborhood is already 25% turned, all of the neighbors will be saying like, oh my gosh, did you see what that house went? Like, that's insane. You know, there's a lot of reasons that people give for not investing once it's hit the 25% mark, but that's really the sweet spot. And then the third rule is buy cash flow, so that the property's cash flow. Now, where I deviate regularly from that is I could certainly buy a piece of property that I have a really modest fix up that will take me into cash flow. So maybe I'm buying a property that's only 60 to 70% filled. And so what I'll do is make modest changes, make it look good from curb appeal, make sure it's safe, great lighting, security system added, common areas all nice, and then really redo the unit so that it's not posh, but it's clean and fresh. And then what you end up having is you have sort of the nicest entry-level apartment into a great neighborhood, and those things fill up immediately.
Right.
So I moved from 60 to 70% occupied to literally 100% occupied in one rental season. And when I buy it, it might not be cash flowing, but within that one rental season, it will cash flow, or I won't buy it.
Okay, exactly right. Yeah, those are good rules. I can see now. You
Right.
stick to those
There
rules.
you go. Right.
When you start deviating from so, you might get yourself in trouble. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you excited about right now, Paul?
Well, I'm still looking at great neighborhoods in Los Angeles that are turning a corner, and adding value in those neighborhoods. And there's a lot of money that you can harvest, and I think while doing it, really improving the neighborhood. So taking C- properties, really improving them to a B+ property, and providing great, safe, livable units in neighborhoods that are really turning the corner. That's what continues to be what I'm really excited about on the multi-family front. Other than that, it's like traveling with my daughter. I just went to Japan, that was cool. Traveling with my girlfriend, went to see the solar eclipse, that was cool. And becoming a better table tennis player.
Oh, very good.
There you go.
What is your perfect day like?
That's a great question, and it is one that definitely includes freedom. So I grew up going through law school, working very hard at things that I didn't enjoy, going to a law firm, dressing up. So sort of being dressed casually, working out of. I have a great office here in Beverly Hills. Can work out of a beautiful house where I live. But I like to go to a cool coffee shop, look at deals, look at some paperwork. Just a really wide, varied set of things to do that bring energy to me and don't take energy away. And then done in time to pick my daughter up from the school bus. I usually, to be fair, am not done with work by that time, but that would include the ideal day and maybe doing a hot yoga class with my girlfriend.
Yeah,
there you go.
You said you're a creator, and I'm similar. I feel like I'm constantly creating,
Yes.
and I just get so much energy. I don't even feel like it's work.
Yes, and that's the beauty of it, for sure. That's where you get to have great success without hard work. It doesn't mean that I'm not putting in smart time and hours to make it happen. It also doesn't mean that I'm not giving up something to do something else, but really doing the things that you love to do. That is such a gift.
I want to thank you for putting all of your experience, your decades of experience into your book, because it's fantastic. You've seen so much, done so much. I think I've done so much and seen so much, but you've done way more than I have, and I just really enjoyed sitting down with you and getting to know you a little better and just learning from your experience, so I really appreciate it.
And likewise. And I like to think of it as the beginning of a journey, for sure, not the end. I think that we can stay remarkably youthful by being healthy. And being active and having things that we love. There's nothing that's, in my view, that puts you in the grave faster than doing something you hate to do day after day after day. And something that gives you energy is just the opposite. And I want to thank you for coming here and interviewing me in person. What an absolute treat. I look forward to having lunch with you afterwards, and we'll sort of compare notes. And the value that you're giving to your listeners is really, really cool. AJ, a guy that works in my team, and I listen to one of your podcasts in order to prep and say, okay, what do we expect? And we're just taking a bunch of notes. We're like, wow, we do not know everything, and it's great to have valuable resources like you. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I want to leave you with 3 next things to do. I'll give you a quick tour of those, and I'll tell you how to do them. Step number 1 is to download my free ebook, The Secret to Raising Money to Buy Your First Apartment Building Deal. It is an awesome ebook full of tips for raising money and how to do that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I put out new videos all the time, and I'd hate for you to miss it. And number 3 is to watch the next video in line. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to click on the first thing, which is to download the ebook. That'll open up a new tab. The video will stop playing. You're going to get the ebook, and then go back to this video, and then click on number 2, right, which is to subscribe on the channel. That'll open a new tab, and then you can go back to the third one and just click on the next video in line. All right, so hope you find that helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.